Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media production, Cymbal Series Day. Today we're talking about one of my favorite things for all seasons, sizzle, rivets, all of that stuff. I guess I'm finding out, a relatively unusual player in that I don't primarily play jazz, but I pretty much always use a main ride cymbal with at least one rivet in it. I fell in love with that sound in college when I was studying jazz, and I just love it. It's just one of those things that if it's not there, I miss it. So it's not for everybody, but we really wanted to talk about it today and just kind of see if it's one of those things you might want to add to your arsenal if you're unused to it, and also some options for not necessarily drilling holes in your cymbal to get a similar sound. The idea of putting things in cymbals like this to get a rattling sound goes back as far back as jazz goes. You can see videos and photos of Chinese cymbals with things stuck in them. There have been various kind of apparatus that hang stuff on top of them. Crazy looking contraptions in an effect to either get like a sizzly sound, to extend the sustain of the cymbal maybe, to shorten the sustain if you use a lot of rivets. There's a lot of directions that this can go. But the main thing is we're modifying the behavior of the cymbal, whether you're talking about the stick sound, the crash sound, and even the bell. Now we're going to go through a bunch of cymbals today with a bunch of different kind of setups, so we're going to dive right into it. The first one we're going to use is the super thin kind of Transtamp Avidus copy that Jesse Simpson made for us, 22 inches, around 2,000 grams. There's nothing in this one, so we're going to start off with this one just by itself. Familiar sound, we've used it in most of the videos, and now we're going to do the non-invasive option here, which is a little piece of sort of ball chain. I'm not sure of the exact way to name this. It's the sort of thing you'd see for like dog tags or maybe like something for your keys. And the thing that's great about this is you can buy lengths of it at the hardware store of whatever you want. You can cut it with wire cutters or a tough pair of scissors. And then what I do is I wrap around the end where the part is where you would make a loop out of it and just press it onto the body of it with a pair of pliers, and then makes a little loop. You can just hang it right underneath the felts, and bingo bango, you have a real quick option for a little bit of sizzle. Now, the nice thing about this is it is a DIY thing. It's very inexpensive. It's non-invasive. You can try it out on all your cymbals. You can make a bunch of different lengths. This one, as you can see, doesn't extend to the edge of the cymbal. I normally use this one for 20s. I like it to go right to the edge. Some people will even hang it over the edge, and I mean, that's another option that might weigh it down a little bit and cut down on the sustain as well. But the long story into a short story is this is a quick way to start to add this kind of behavior to a cymbal that you already have. Now, next up, we're going to move to a cymbal that has some holes in it. This is my ride cymbal that I use for just about anything up to a certain volume threshold. It's a 20-inch original from Jesse Simpson. I got it from him. It's got 6 holes in it already. I use it with 1, maybe 2 rivets in it. It's got 1 today, and we're going to demo this one a little bit. When we're talking about amounts of rivets, there's 2 ways to look at this. If it's a heavier cymbal, adding more rivets is going to add more rivet sound. It's the same thing if you have a very stiff cymbal. If you've got a lot of sort of higher overtones and a lot of sustain in the cymbal in the first place, really regardless of the weight or not, but just in terms of how long it sings for when you strike it, adding more rivets is going to get you more rivet sound, a little bit more sustain, and you'll start to run into those rivets kind of covering each other's kind of sound and make a more even sort of sizzle as the decay of the cymbal goes down. On the other hand, this Jesse Simpson cymbal is actually fairly soft, it's fairly bendable, and it doesn't weigh very much. So if you go past 2 rivets, it starts to actually muffle the cymbal a lot, and you get a really different kind of behavior, which is also usable and an interesting sound and a sound that I like. But generally speaking, for the stuff that I do, 1 to 2 is about the right thing for me. Now, moving to something not totally different, but a little bit different, we have Ben's 20-inch Bosphorus traditional ride here. Now, this cymbal is also hand-hammered. It's not that different in terms of the weight range to the Jesse. It's maybe 100 or 200 grams heavier. But the big difference with this one is it is hammered to be a little bit stiffer and have a little bit more sustain and a little bit more high-end, both in the 6 sound and the crash sound. So this one has 4 rivets in it, and you're going to hear that the riveted sound is brighter, not just because there's more rivets in it, but also because the cymbal itself is stiffer, so it's promoting that vibration for longer, whereas the previous cymbal starts to kind of die down, and any rivets in there is going to quicken that. Additionally, with this one, because the bell is bright but also integrated into the body and it is a stiffer cymbal, there's quite a bit of sound in the bell sound of the activated rivets when you get into it, which is a sound that I didn't know I was hearing in a lot of jazz music until I had a riveted cymbal and realized that a bell sound that I liked was one that actually had some rivet in it. It wasn't just the pure kind of chimey thing. Now, we should talk about what a rivet is, because it's not for cymbals, and a lot of times you can't buy them at music stores. Generally speaking, I buy them at hardware stores or I buy them on the internet, and what it is a sort of old school way of fastening things together. There are split rivets, which is what I use, that can be installed with a screwdriver or a pair of like needle nose pliers. And then there are a different kind of rivet called pop rivets, where you actually have to have a tool to get it in there, unless you want to do it in sort of a ham-fisted way with a hammer, and I don't want to bring hammers around cymbals. We leave that for the professionals. It's fair, I think, to say that most people, or at least a lot of people, associate a riveted sound with jazz playing. I hear it a lot in situations where people are playing with brushes, playing softly. It's a ballad kind of thing. Oftentimes, the riveted cymbal is not even the primary ride. It might be the left side or a third cymbal that's off to the side, way over. Or maybe even if you're doing big band or some situation where you want to use like a swish knocker, sometimes those have 20 rivets in them. Sometimes 6. It's a big kind of broad swath. But something that I do want to mention, as I said up front, is that I really like rivets in all sorts of styles of music. And I don't think about it as being a style-specific sound or setup or anything like that. It's just about whether I want to hear that sound in that context. And an awful lot of the time, the way that drums are mixed and mic'd and everything else, the rivet behavior is not as dramatic in the recording or in the live situation as you might think. I know a few people who like to use very lightweight rivets in their cymbals, like copper rivets or very narrow ones, and oftentimes I can't actually hear them when I'm not right at the kit, especially if anybody else is playing, and particularly if there are any horns that are also making that kind of frequency range. There have been a lot of prominent players that have used riveted cymbals in loud music. The one that jumps to mind for me, and a personal favorite, is John Theodore. If you watch older videos of the Mars Volta, other ones, he is swinging for the fences, and he's got rivets in that cymbal. So just so we're clear, you can do this if you want to. It doesn't matter what kind of music you're playing. It's just a sound. It's a fun sound. You can put them in a splash cymbal if you want to. If you've ever seen those little kind of like timbali cymbals that some people use on their drum sets that have a bunch of rivets in them, lots of options. Additionally, and we might talk about this in a future episode, some people like to put rivets in their bottom hi-hat cymbal, and I have one of those too. We didn't bring it today because we're kind of focusing on just the rivets themselves, but a fun option if you want, especially if you play with your feet or if you want to have a really washy sound when you start to open it up a little bit. There's a lot you can do with rivets beyond just the sizzly jazzy bit. Important side note here also. Thing 1, removing the amount of metal from a pre-existing cymbal that would hold a rivet is not going to impact the cymbal in a way that you can hear, especially if it's, 8 or less holes. If you drill 100 in there, you might hear something a little bit different, but this isn't the same as cymbals that you hear that are full of holes on purpose to make them sound a certain way. If these rivets are not in here, the cymbal is indistinguishable from an identical cymbal that doesn't have these holes drilled. Secondarily, do not do this with a hand drill at home. Don't do it. Find someone who has a drill press and knows what they're doing and have them do it for you. Some drum shops will do this for you, many of them actually. Anyone that manufactures or makes or works on cymbals will probably have a solution for this. All of my cymbals that have holes in them currently were drilled by Jesse Simpson. Highly recommend, but just whatever you do, don't just grab your hand drill and go crazy, because I've seen cymbals get destroyed from this. I've watched it happen. Don't do it. The bottom line here is that if this is a sound that you're curious about, as we were kind of demonstrating here, you don't have to do anything to the cymbals that you own, and you also don't have to get a new cymbal. You can try out chains. There are a lot of rattler products that you can get as well if you want to go a little further or you want something heavier, that kind of thing. But this is another situation to just either explore within this if it's a thing that you already do, or if it's something that you're unaccustomed to, dive in, check it out. If it turns out that it's for you, great. If not, that's fine too.